All right, it is a great pleasure to welcome in a good friend of mine and someone that's been on the show before. We have Emmanuel Berbari, the sports manager from WFUV 90.7 FM. E-Man, how's it going?
Bobby, it's great to be with you. Doing well. Hope the same for you. And it's great to chat again. I remember back in March, you started this guest series, and we were wondering how COVID would unfold. There was a lot of uncertainty back then, and it seems like, wow, just how it's unfolded over the last several months.
Yeah, you were actually our first guest in this series. And again, like you said at that time, I think a lot of us thought that we would not be doing all of these virtual conferences from home. But here we are, pretty much almost at the start of October with a lot of the same things going on. But I think things are really improved. I wanted to get your perspective, obviously, as it's hard to believe that you're only a senior in college, but wanted to get your perspective about how things have been at Fordham University as one of the All-American and top broadcasters in the country.
Thanks, Bobby. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's been an interesting transition, but like you said, things are drastically better than they were when we spoke in March, and we really didn't know what was going on. Fordham's been able to return some of their on-campus activities, some of their in-person classes for that matter. From my perspective, it's been a lot of virtual learning and just kind of embracing the new format, the new online format. So baby steps in the right direction, and you're starting to see a little bit of a return of college sports. Pro sports have made a successful return as well. You have baseball postseason, which I'm sure we'll be getting into. So a lot of good steps in the right direction and hopefully paving way for a great 2021.
And we've got some real exciting news here on BronxNet. A few things to talk about this morning. First and foremost, talk a little bit about this new move back to an old time slot for one-on-one.
Absolutely. So if anyone has followed the show on 90.7 FM over the last several years, it's been a 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon show on Saturdays. We haven't been on that slot for the last 5 months due to the coronavirus pandemic, lack of studio access. So it allowed us to reassess the footing of the show. And one-on-one used to be overnight show, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., reacting to the day's events, previewing a jam-packed NFL Sunday. There are a lot of perks to doing the show in that time slot. So that's where we'll be starting this weekend. Will be 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. on 90.7 FM, and also continuing our digital footprint that we've established throughout the pandemic. Facebook Live, YouTube Live, taking comments, also taking calls back on 90.7. So a lot of exciting things happening, and it'll be a nice way to complement the show with the digital access we've been able to establish.
And then, like we said, basketball season just around the corner. I guess Fordham Athletics and the rest of the campus community at Rose Hill in the Bronx excited and optimistic to try to keep things intact. Hopefully the numbers continue to stay well here with the virus and we can have basketball back in the Bronx. And it seems like the Fordham Rams will be playing come the end of November.
Very great news because, like everything else, there was a lot of unknown with that entering the year. But it does look like uniform throughout college basketball. They're aiming for that late November start. And that means basketball at Rose Hill. It means Fordham Hoops. And it looks like just from hearing the way they're planning it and trying to keep the virus spread at a minimum, a lot of fun local matchups could be in store for Fordham basketball as well. They have the Battle of the Bronx every year, but maybe an Iona, a Stony Brook, a Harvard on the schedule. So a lot of cool possibilities for the Fordham basketball programs to not only contain the spread, but also create some local appeal that they've been looking for the last several years.
E-Man wanted to give a shout out to Fordham Athletics and specifically their sports information, their longtime sports information director, Joe DeBarry, because we've also partnered with them on this new show. And you, of course, as being one of the top broadcasters, young broadcasters in the country, you've gotten a chance to lend your talents to that too. So I wanted you to speak about that show. And I think also for the fans at home that have seen some of the coverage that we have between both places, you've probably gotten an opportunity to see our Gately show, The Ram with Coach Gately, which now for back-to-back years is the top college sports show by the New York State Broadcasters Association. So exciting to have those awards. So talk a little bit about this new show and about the prospects of maybe winning some more awards for BronxNet and WFUV.
So like you said, a continuing partnership between Fordham Athletics, FUV, and BronxNet. It's called Running Rampant, and if you haven't already seen it on BronxNet, you will be on a bi-weekly basis. And it's basically highlighting the Fordham athletic community, everything from workouts to individual profiles to how athletes are staying fresh during these uncertain times to the administrators who really make everything happen. And that was one of the more interesting perspectives I think we were able to obtain in our first episode of Running Rampant was there have been a lot of driving forces behind the return to somewhat normalcy this fall. It hasn't been an easy process. That balance between personal health and personal prosperity, getting these athletes ready to go back on campus, learning, and also getting ready for competition. So all those administrators who have made that happen, we've been able to highlight a little bit. So really excited for what's ahead with running Rampant. We had a lot of success already with the Ram with Coach Gately, and now we add another show to that list with a continuing partnership with Fordham Athletics.
You did get an opportunity for WFUV to be in the press box at Yankee Stadium. I know I was there for BronxNet. I think it is a surreal thing right now to actually cover baseball games during COVID. So wanted to get your thoughts on that. And then, of course, wanted to ask you about the Bronx Bombers themselves, because looking pretty good in the wild card series so far. Wanted to see what you thought about their prospects of actually winning it all.
So first, just being back in the press box, like you said, Bobby, we can both relate it was a surreal experience. Not only are you back in a place that I think a lot of people take for granted on a daily basis and that daily grind of a baseball season. Back in 2019, we had packed Yankee stadiums. They were in the middle of a pennant race, and it was like the normal baseball that you love, you come to love, and you come to show up to the ballpark every day with your eyes wide open towards that. But it got robbed from us for a while. So just being back and being one of the 10 to 15 media members in Yankee Stadium and basically being the only people on top of the players and the coaching staffs and the personnel that are allowed in that building, definitely a surreal type of environment and something you definitely don't take for granted. And just seeing a very competitive, high stakes September baseball game being played with no one in the crowd, certainly a different feel and something we'll remember for a long time. But the Yankees, streaky team this year, start 16-6, go on the 5-15 spell. Then they run off a 10-game winning streak and they finish the season losing 6 of 8. They head into the postseason. You don't know which Yankee team you're going to get. Well, in game 1 against the Indians, Bobby, that was the best we've seen the Yankees all year. Garrett Cole was phenomenal and everyone contributed offensively. So if they keep that up, I think we're penciling them back in as a team to beat in the American League.
You know, E-Man, speaking of other series, and there's definitely been some entertaining ones, and we've had some surprising teams. I don't know if there is a more surprising team of all the postseason teams than maybe the Miami Heat. I mean, the Miami Heat, of course, now reached the NBA Finals, maybe the hottest team inside the bubble in Orlando, Florida throughout this process. But the LA Lakers, of course, a pretty formidable opponent in the NBA Finals. Your thoughts on the Heat and what you expect from that series?
I think at every turn, the Heat have sort of been underestimated, even though they've been the hottest team in the bubble. Entering the playoffs, you probably expected the Milwaukee Bucks out of the East. Then you put the Heat up against the Boston Celtics, and they were favored in that series, and the Heat came away with it. They're playing really great team basketball. Kudos to everyone in that organization, Eric Spoelstra, for putting together that product on a yearly basis. So I think every time the Heat get underestimated, they shine and they thrive and they prove what great team basketball can do. So while I do favor the Lakers in this series, I think it's LeBron's season to lose. I thought that from the beginning. I thought that throughout. He's going to win a title in LA. I would not underestimate the Heat, and I also would expect a deep series, maybe 6 or 7 games.
On Friday's show on BronxNet, I took the Heat in 7. So
wow.
I'm rooting for the Lakers because, of course, I think they're the sentimental favorite with Kobe Bryant's tragic passing in January. But at the same time, I just think it is one of those wacky and wild kind of seasons. And I would not be surprised if the Heat somehow pull the upset of upsets and maybe win in 6 or 7 games.
Absolutely. I think everything's on the table this year. And all it takes, we've seen it so many times, as a team to get that mojo, get that momentum. And until they have someone kind of knock them in the face and prove that they can beat them and keep them down and keep them out, they keep going. You have to prove to a team that's in that rhythm, in that mojo, that they can be defeated. And the Heat haven't had anyone meet that challenge yet, where they can step up to the table and say, hey, we're outright better than you. And until that happens, your prediction just may come true. They may run the table.
Well, E-Man, you always have the mojo, my friend. So excited to have you back on the show. Congratulations on all of the individual success. And then, of course, the return of one-on-one to a very nostalgic time slot. The good old days of when Mike Breen and Michael Kay were on the air on 90.7 right here in the Bronx.
Bobby, appreciate you having me. Fun time as always, and all the best.